I've done video tips in the past on all the best ways to write screener questions and recruit for all of your user testing studies. But today I'm putting down the ultimate guide to screener questions, the best practices for recruiting, and how to ensure you are getting exactly the people you need for the research that you want to do. The big question is, what is a screener question? A screener question is a question you ask to a prospective respondent to ensure that they fit certain criteria in your study. For example, you might ask them, what industry do you work in? You might not want people who work in the banking industry, or you might want people who work in the restaurant services industry. So you ask a screener question to get people to respond and self-qualify into your research study. But as we all know, when you are asking people to self-identify and answer questions for you to get into a study in which compensation is going to be paid, people will unfortunately try to get into your study even if they don't necessarily belong. It's not because they're bad people. It's just because they think, my opinion is still probably valid, even if I'm not exactly the person that they're looking for. I bet I could help. They want to be helpful. And so they're going to try to get into your study because they want to get paid. But in this definitive ultimate guide, I'm going to talk through the best practices for screener questions and how to avoid getting people into your study that should not be there. And the very first, most important thing you can ask after writing any single screener question is, can someone easily guess the answer that I'm looking for? If people can easily guess the answer, the screener question is almost pointless. Because if you say something where it is obvious that you want someone to say they're looking to buy a car in the next 6 months, well, then they're going to say, yeah, I'm looking to buy a car in the next 6 months because I might be. It's not going to hurt. I mean, I'm not really, but it seems like they want someone who's looking to buy a car. And so I'm going to say, yes, I want to buy a car. Now, the reason that it could be easily guessable might be because of the way you wrote the question. It might be because the previous question primed somebody. Like you might have asked them, what is your favorite car? Have you seen any car commercials lately? And then the next question is, are you thinking of buying a car in the next 6 months? Or list all the things you want to buy in the next 6 months, and one of them is car. Well, you've already asked a question about cars, so you're making it fairly obvious that you want someone to pick a car. So think about your screeners. Think about if it's obvious to guess the answer. And if possible, ask a friend. Ask somebody to look at your screener, look at the whole questionnaire and say, just fill this out as you normally would, or try to guess the right answers. And if they guess more of your answers than you would have expected, where you know they're not qualified because you know them, then you know that your screeners are easily guessable. Usually this is a common sense thing and you can figure it out on your own, but this is what we have friends and coworkers for, so just ask someone else if you need help. That moves us to number 2, and for this one, I'm going to actually open the platform and show it to you. So here we are on the platform. I'm going to go ahead and create a new test to get me to my audience builder where the screener questions live. So create a test from scratch. We're going to test a website. We're going to build an audience, and we're going to select our audience now. Over on the right side, you do see all of the filters. We're not going to be talking about the profile filters today. We're going to be going down straight to the screener questions. I click on the screener question button to generate a new screener question, and I'm simply going to type in a screener question here. Do you work in a bank? Yes. No. And I'm going to say yes is the accept because I want people who work in a bank. This is an example of a binary question. It's a yes or no question, and leading from my previous comment about do not use screener questions that are easily guessable. Well, something that's just yes, no is a 50-50 guess. So this gives somebody who wants to get into your study the best odds of guessing what the right answer is. It's 50-50. Do I work in a bank? Sure, I work in a bank. I'll just say yes and see what the next question is, because I can evaluate whether or not I want to quit on the next question. If it seems more technical, then I might say, okay, I don't want to keep going. But if it's less technical, if it's just more generic, I'd say, sure, I'll just keep going and we'll see how this goes once I get into the study. So what you want to do is avoid binary questions. So instead of saying, do you work in a bank? Yes, no, we're going to add a new screener question that actually shows the right way to do this. So I clicked on the screener question button, scroll down a little bit, select the option that most closely matches where you work. And then we're going to add a bunch of options. We're going to put in supermarket. We're going to put in bank. We're going to add a couple of more answers here just to get them on the board. We're going to say auto shop. We're going to say office. We're going to say park. And we're going to say, let's say, what's the last one we can come up with? A zoo. And we'll add one more, just one more. Doctor's office. Now, for all of these, they're going to be reject, but bank will be accept. And I might also recommend that let's just resort these into alphabetical order because we want to eliminate anything that could give away what the right answer is. So by putting them in a specific order that is commonly understood, people will they'll see the order. They won't see any like, oh, maybe it's auto shop because it's first. They won't, bank is second, but they won't necessarily see that bank is meant to be selected because it's just alphabetical. So this is a much better way to write a question than a binary option. So binary, 50-50 chance of guessing it right. Now here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 answers, 1 out of 7 chance of guessing it correctly. Most people are going to answer honestly, but there's always going to be some. It's not unique to user testing. It is something that anyone that is doing research and paying compensation for respondents, you kind of just have to deal with this. So writing the questions in a very specific way will give you the best chance of getting only the people that you need. The next thing about screener questions is when you are doing a multi-select, you'll see here at the bottom, allow contributors to select more than one answer or allow contributors to select only one answer. This is a pure accept and reject. This means you can only select one answer. You cannot work in a bank and somewhere else. But you may have multiple responsibilities in the bank. So if the follow-up question was going to be about responsibilities, it would be a multi-select. So I'm going to add another screener question here. And we're going to write that question as a multi-select. So let's say, please select all of the responsibilities you have, in a given day at the bank. Okay. Now we're going to put a bunch of options in. So count the money. Put that in. I'm just obviously making these up. Count the money, schedule the tellers, fill the ATM, add another, sweep the floor. We'll add another, buy snacks, buy office supplies, add another, refill pantry food items, and let's come up with one more, add another, open/lock the bank. Okay, so now we've given a lot of options here, and let's just say for the sake of argument that we were looking for someone in more of a managerial type of a role. And so we're looking for, okay, the person who schedules the tellers. Oh, wait, let me check this. Allow to select more than one. You'll notice that these options changed. And now instead of just accept, reject, you have must select, may select, and reject. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say schedule the tellers, must select. And so right now, I know that I want the person who does the bank scheduling, but they may have other responsibilities as well. So I have to be careful not to leave any of these as a reject unless I explicitly want to reject them. So I'm going to say may select, and I'm going to say buying office supplies may select, and definitely, whoops, I accidentally clicked on an extra answer there for none of the above. And I'm going to say open and lock the bank is a may select. But my brain is telling me, yeah, I don't want someone who sweeps the floor and does the pantry items because that's someone in the custodial staff. But you have to think about the fact that would somebody answer possibly that, yeah, the manager maybe does everything. The manager, if there's something that needs to be swept, the manager will just sweep it. So they're going to say, yeah, I sweep the floor sometimes. So by putting sweep the floor as a reject, you may be inadvertently rejecting a qualified respondent to your study. So don't always put a reject just because it's not a typical function. Only put a reject if it is an explicit, like if this person ever picks up a broom, I don't want to hear from them. So be careful with your rejects. The other thing that you want to be careful of is adding in multiple musts. Adding in multiple musts is something that you also want to be careful of because you are saying that you must select everything. So if instead of saying they must count the money, they must schedule the tellers, they must fill the ATM, and they must buy office supplies, and even if I said they may select this and they may select that, I will now only be recruiting people that pass all four. They will have to select all four. So if you don't really mean they must do all four of these activities, so make sure that you set your may selects, must selects, and rejects very carefully. Also, you do have the option at the bottom, which I clicked on before. It is for none of the above as a choice. If you want to let someone say, I don't do any of these things, and you can just automatically click it. You don't have to type it in, and it will add to the bottom as a reject option. The last thing to keep in mind when you are doing a multiple choice question, especially a multi-select, is sometimes, like this one, we have the ability to select everything. You could just select everything and nothing is going to reject you. Even though we do have explicit wants here, we're looking for people that do a couple of things and maybe some others. In this case, we do not want to allow people the freedom to just select everything and advance in our study. So we're going to want to add another question here that allows us to sort of sniff out the cheaters. If someone's cheating and just trying to answer everything, I'm going to give you a technique right now that will catch them. And it is called the bogus answer. It's pretty simple. You stick something in that seems vaguely like it could be a right answer, but you know it's completely made up. It's not a real responsibility. So if I add another answer, stamp holograms onto older bills. Okay, so we know this is a make-believe answer. Any holograms or anything that are on a bill are put on by the mint. No one at a bank alters money in any way. And so we know this is a fake answer. And so we stick this one sort of in the middle somewhere. Or again, if this was alphabetical, then it would just be where the S goes. But definitely, if you're going to put a bogus answer in, don't put one in that's either at the very beginning or the very end, because this is where people will most likely pay attention. So kind of make sure that it goes into the middle somewhere. If you are alphabetizing, phrase it in a way that sticks it into the middle. But now if someone comes through and just checks off every option here for this multiple select, they're going to select stamp holograms onto older bills and it will be rejected. So this is I call it sort of a landmine question or a bogus question. This is a great way to catch people who are just trying to get into your study by offering them an option that is going to get them rejected from the study without them really noticing. We've added a few screener questions at this point about banking. You work in a bank, the types of activities that you do in a bank. Someone is basically about to get ready to start your study. And this is where, especially for niche audiences, I recommend another technique that I call the skin in the game technique. This is where we ask someone very explicitly to confirm their selections to ensure that they are qualified for the study while letting them know that the qualifications to complete the study successfully are going to be dependent on the answers they've given. So let me show you how that works. We're going to add another screener question, and we're going to write something like this. You have stated that you work in a bank and are responsible for the scheduling of the tellers. You will be required to demonstrate this activity during this test. Are you still willing to proceed? And now we can ask a binary question. yes or no, and yes is the accept. So by doing this, we're letting them know that what you have said is going to be important and you will not be able to complete the study without it. A lot of times, as I said earlier, people think, oh, I'll be able to figure out my way through it. It's just a usability test. I know how websites are supposed to work. So I can actually just tell them if I don't like the button, I don't like the colors, I don't like this or that. But you want to let them know that this is more than that. You will need to be intimately familiar with banking and scheduling applications, and you're going to have to show it in this study. So you can even go so far as to say something like, if you are not qualified and you go into the study, it will be reported back to user testing. Nobody wants to get reported because that means they could possibly be kicked out of the panel, and then no more money, no more tests. So the skin in the game technique is a great way to get people to consciously say, okay, this is what's needed. And if I proceed, I'm probably not going to be able to do the study. So it's something to think about when you're doing your screeners is the skin in the game technique. Now I'm going to show you a bonus option that you can do in your test itself to help with the screener verification. We've already done a few screener questions. We've laid some traps, some bogus questions. We didn't use any binary questions. Nothing seemed obvious. And then we added the skin in the game technique before they were allowed to get into our study. But now we're in the test plan builder, and I'm going to show you what you can do to instantly verify if somebody has still decided to come into your study that shouldn't be there. The answer is a simple verbal or written question. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to put in a written question. And we're going to say, what is your job title? So very simple. What is your job title? And now they're going to have to remember that they said they work in a bank and they manage the tellers. So they're either going to have to write bank manager or something like that. But some people will just forget what they answered in the screeners and they'll write in anything. So if they're not a bank manager or some other kind of bank operations supervisor, something like that, they'll just write it here and you'll know right away. So very simple. Use a written question to get them to tell you very matter-of-factly about themselves. And if it doesn't match what was in the screeners, you'll know to reject. And the way that you reject is through the rating system on the respondents video list on the sessions tab. The second thing you can do, and this one is actually even more important, is the verbal response question. So we're going to click this in, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a question that just gets the participant talking, just gets them talking about the things that anybody who answered the screener questions the way they did should be able to talk about. So let's write the question. Please spend 1 to 2 minutes talking about your role in the bank and your typical daily responsibilities. Share anything that you like or dislike about your role. Now, by doing this, we're going to just get them openly talking. They're going to talk about a lot of things that a bank manager or someone in authority should know. We didn't tell them all these other responsibilities necessarily. So now it's going to be up to them to talk about their daily responsibilities. And it should be fairly obvious to anyone who is actually doing research on banking in this particular role, what's real and what's not. And so it should be fairly obvious if they're just making things up, just talking high level, not giving any specifics, and you will know that this is not someone that you want in your research study. The positive benefit of doing this beyond just validating the screeners is you're getting them talking. You're just getting them to open up, get comfortable, giving think out loud feedback. And as they progress into your study, they are going to be more apt to give you just great feedback in terms of the ability to think out loud as they're reacting to things that are on the screen or questions that you've asked them. So it's a great technique after the screeners are done to go in and make sure that as part of the study right up front, we can validate on top of the screeners if they are who they say they are to ensure we have the right people doing the rest of the tasks in our study. There is one other thing that I want to share with you about your screener questions once you've actually launched your study, but before your study is complete. Sometimes, as I've shown you, the screener questions can be too restrictive, but we don't realize it and our study doesn't fill. So user testing has a way for you to see where your screener questions are having problems. And I'm going to show you that right now by giving you an opportunity to look at screener pass rates for a study that I am running. Now, here you can see that in this audience test study, 7 out of 10 people have filled, but there is an issue for some. Now, it says there are pass rates available right here. I can click on View the Pass Rates, and it brings up my screener questions that show what is going on in my study. Now, you can see here, my primary job function is in which category. You can see it's along the lines of the type of question that I suggested. Less than 20% passed. If I click on that, I can see all my options here for marketing and advertising, legal, operations, information technology, etc. Now, I only want IT people. So it is actually reasonable that only 20% have passed my screener. But if I needed to change it, I could go and say, actually, I will accept information technology and I'll accept data analytics. And I can make that an accept. And if I want, I can set that and then I can relaunch my screener. As I come down, you'll see 40%, 40%, more than 60%, less than 30%. So really, the most restrictive question in my study is this first one about the job category. So if I truly wanted someone only in IT, but maybe data analytics is considered IT in a lot of departments. I know in my career, I managed data analytics for 20 years as part of the IT function. So maybe I should set data analytics as accept. So I can change things. Then down below, I can relaunch the screener, and that will redistribute to the audience with the updated screeners, increasing the possibility that I'm going to fill my study. Now, at this point, I have been just showing you how to do screener questions in unmoderated think out loud tests. When you do an unmoderated survey, it's a little bit different in that you have a couple of extra options, which I do want to share, one of which you can use toward your Think Out Loud study screener questions, and the other one you cannot. So let's go back into the platform. I'm going to take you into the surveys, and I'm going to show you a couple of extra options as we finish up this ultimate guide to screener questions and recruiting. You can see now that I'm in the audience selection option screen for building a survey. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select user testing networks, just like we did for the unmoderated Think Out Loud study. And it is going to give me the same options that I had for the most part as in the unmoderated Think Out Loud version. So down here, we've got our screeners, and they're here in a list as opposed to being off on the side so you can overtly see them. We're going to go all the way down to the screener questions. And here are the options for adding screener questions. When I click on a screener question, you're going to see I am going to be presented with a few different choices than I had before. I'm going to start by typing the same question that I typed to start the unmoderated Think Out Loud version. So, do you work in a bank? And I'm going to say yes, no. Okay, now that I've done that, you can see, do you work in a bank? Yes, no. I'm going to say this is a single select, and it is may select. And then the second where it's no is disqualify. So I've got, instead of accept, reject, I have may select and disqualify. Down below, though, you're going to see there is an option that says check for common screener mistakes. This is an AI check that will review your screener questions and tell you if you've done anything wrong. So let's press it and see what happens. It's checking for common screener mistakes, and you can see it says consider rephrasing to avoid leading people to certain answers. Now, what it's telling us is this is an obvious question. Do you work in a bank? It's probable that you want people to select yes. So it'll tell you that. It will also tell you things like if you have written a leading question or things like that. So if you're building, even if you're building an unmoderated Think Out Loud study, like a usability test, a qualitative test, you can still come over here in a second tab, let's say, like I have, and you can run your screener questions through the AI analysis. Eventually, the same feature will be available on both as the unified platform is deployed, but for now, you can just do it this way. So you can go here, you can analyze your screener questions, and then if there's no problems, you know they're good to go by putting them into your Think Out Loud unmoderated qualitative study. The other thing that you're going to see that's different here is when you do a multi-select. If you do a multi-select, you are given a new option. Now, I talked about earlier the dangers of the must select. When you have multiple must selects, they must all be selected in order to proceed. You'll see here, there are two different options now. So I still have may select, required, and disqualify now. So may select, must select, and reject. But I can say required, and I can say disqualify. And I'll just add a couple of other answers that make no sense, but I'll say maybe, I have no idea, and like that. And I will also say that maybe is required, and I have no idea is a disqualify, and is a disqualify. When I go down below, so I said disqualify. When I go down below now, you can see that it says all required answers must be selected, or at least one of the required answers must be selected. So that means that when you're doing a survey, you are given the ability to do an either or. So this must be selected or that must be selected. So you can have multiple options that are must select. And then if you pick the at least one, you know that only one of those has to be chosen in order for someone to pass through the study. There is an additional feature which is available on surveys, which is not available in the Think Out Loud qualitative feedback studies, which is right here, add logic. This is branching logic for your screeners. Now I'm going to have to go ahead really quickly and through the magic of video, create a couple of screener questions, and then we're going to show you how the add logic section works. So here we go now, and there it is. The add logic button is now lit up because there are now questions that I can actually build logic for. So let's go ahead and click add logic. And you can see now if the answer contains, there's a select answer and then go to select question. So if the answer contains yes, we can go to select question. You selected yes. And now I can say otherwise go to you selected, what do you mean? So you can build in your own logic now in a survey screener question. That's an extra feature that is going to be coming soon to all options on user testing for building a study. But for now, it's available in the quantitative version because we're dealing with very large sample sizes. So when you're talking about sample sizes up in the thousands, there's a high probability that you're going to want multiple sets of criteria, even if they answer no to one question, it might actually be a qualifier that you can then have to drive them into your study. So just know that on the survey side of things, there are these additional options for the either or option, the AI screener question review option to tell you whether or not there's a problem with your question, and then the ability to do branching logic within your screeners. So 3 options on a survey that you definitely want to take advantage of. That's going to be it. Screener questions are probably the most important thing that you'll need to understand and be able to do well in order to generate great research studies with user testing or any other platform. If you can't ensure that you're talking to the right people, what difference does it make what feedback they give? So follow all of these tips, follow all of my advice. You're going to get great results. You're going to see improvement immediately if you start using these. The number one complaint from virtually anyone on any research platform, no matter who it is, even if it's in person, is, boy, I wish that I was getting the right people. Well, with user testing, you can absolutely get the right people. And the screener tips, the best practices, the guidance that I've given you today is going to help you get there. That's going to be it for now, but don't worry, I'll be back again soon. Until then, I will see you later.